The world is made up of many characters, and property is no different too. Fortunately, most people in the community that we get to meet are absolutely wonderful. But occasionally, you, Rob and I, will meet some other different types of characters who possibly shouldn't invest in property. This week, we look at, are you the right person to invest in property?
Yeah, welcome to the Property Podcast, episode 177, to be known in future as the episode in which we alienated half the people who are listening. No, I don't think we will actually, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're almost certainly the right type of person to invest in property. But not everyone is. We're going to be talking about some of those characters later in the episode. It should be a really fun one. We've also got two resources of the week. We do spoil you, and a really interesting news story. But first, we've just got to get some quick announcements in, Rob.
Yes, first of all, meetups tonight. Hurrah! So if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, which is a Thursday, get yourself along to a meetup. Go to thepropertyhub.net/meetups. Rob and I will be attending different ones. Rob will be in Leicester. Are you looking forward to that one, Rob?
I am very much. I've not been to Leicester for a very long time. I don't know a great deal about it. And so where better to find out about it than from locals at a meetup? Should be really good.
Super. And I'm off to King's Cross for a change. And that's got nothing to do with it being opposite the RMP office.
An area you know relatively well, I would say.
Yes, an area I know quite well and met a few of the investors. But alas, I will be there because I've got to work late due to some work I have to do. But anyway, we won't talk about stuff like that. We'll talk about more exciting stuff. And more exciting stuff is you've got 1 week. 1 week for what? Well, 1 week for the Northern Summit. Remember that? We are giving you the chance to pick where our Northern Summit will be. It's going to finish 1 week today. So don't miss the opportunity. If you're based in the North and you've wanted a summit up there for a while, get it in your location. We're at your mercy. Wherever you want to take us, we will go. We'll even go to... No, I was going to slag off an area then. I won't say that. But wherever you vote, we will end up. So go to thepropertyhub.net/vote. Super simple. Click on the link, place your vote, and that's it. And then, hopefully, in a week or two, we'll be able to announce the winner.
Yeah, good save there, Rob. We don't want a repeat of when I offended everyone in Burnley. That's probably a couple of years ago now, but we're just about getting over the shockwaves.
I can't believe you brought it up again.
I know. Speaking of shockwaves, Brexit is a topic that has, been on everyone's mind just a little bit. And we've talked about it. We've done 2 episodes on it now. We did a sort of like an emergency episode just afterwards, and then we did a full episode the week after that. But there's still a lot more to say on the topic. So we're going to be doing some special Brexit webinars, talking about everything you could possibly want to know about the potential outcomes, the opportunities in there, the risks in there, and give you a chance to ask any questions you've got. More about that coming up very soon.
Yeah, I've trialled them this week with some of the RMP clients, and it's been very well received. So I thought, this isn't fair. We've got to share the love. So Property Podcast listeners, Hub members, you will get a chance. As Rob said, more on that in the next week or two. But I'm sure you'll find it very, very useful. And if that's not enough, Rob, if we haven't been busy enough, I've now committed to my first investment of the year. It's only July.
You're actually investing in property.
Yeah.
Is that a good idea? I'm not sure.
Unbelievable. Well, for those who know me and have been speaking to me, I've been buying my own home for what seems like years. I'm finally bringing that to a close now, completing. So I'm now going to turn my attention back to investing. I've got through those about 1,000 hurdles. Trust me, buying your own home is so much harder than buy-to-let. I've got through those hurdles, and I've made my first investment this week. And I'll give you more. We'll probably do something on that in a few weeks' time once the deal's progressed a bit. But it's in Bradford. It's a bit of a cracker. I'm pretty excited by it. A cheap one. But I'm sure there's a podcast or two in that about the process and why I picked it out. So more on that in a few weeks' time, I'm sure.
Yeah, people are always asking for more case studies. The episode that we did about our recent investments is one of our most popular ever, so we should definitely do that. Let's move along, though, to our news story this week. And this is, we've just been talking about Brexit. This is also on that subject. You picked this one out, Rob. A huge spike in Chinese property investors' interest in the UK post-Brexit is the headline.
It is. Admittedly, I'm a bit lazy because I took this from the Brexit webinars I've been doing the last week. However, it's a massive news story. So one of the impacts of the pound weakening is that overseas investors are going to be interested in the UK, and property investors are going to be interested in UK property. The Chinese Rightmove, or whatever it's called over there, their version of it, their biggest property portal, has seen, since Brexit's been announced, a 40% increase in inquiries in UK property. Now, there's quite a few people in China, I'm led to believe, and their biggest portal probably gets a few visits. So to see a 40% increase in interest in UK property is bonkers. And as we've talked about before, a lot of that interest now is being sort of diverted into Manchester and Birmingham as well. So it's really interesting to see all that money going to start probably piling in to the UK in the not too distant future. If you have any doubts, just remember 2009 and 10, because they were the first to come in as well. And it's not just the Chinese, it's all overseas investors. The pound's been devalued against every major currency around the world.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one to keep an eye on and see how that plays out. But you're right, 40% increase is not to be sniffed at. And it's interesting, given that we're in the immediate kind of aftermath when nobody's quite sure what's happening. Uncertainty is at its height, and yet still people are still very interested. I think, yeah, that is definitely one to watch.
Okay, so it's time for our topic of the week. We've enjoyed putting this together. It's been fun. Now, I will get a disclaimer in right from the start. The descriptions reflect a generic makeup of several people for each category and do not apply to one individual. And the fact you're listening to the podcast, the chances are you're not one of these people. However, you've probably met them. Property's full of characters, and as I say, that's not limited. You know, it applies to property investors as well. It's not just people who work in the industry. Rob and I have had the pleasure of interacting with thousands of property investors through our businesses, meetups, summits, events, and the overwhelming majority are well-balanced, wonderful people. And dear listener, that is probably you. However, occasionally we come across people who just don't seem suited to property, yet they continue to plough ahead, or try to. We want to give you an idea of those profiles so potentially you can avoid them. And if by some miracle you are one and listening to the show, you can save yourself the bother.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And there's always people who will say, you know, anyone can invest in property. And they tend to be sort of saying this in the sense of, you know, you don't need any money, you don't need any experience, just sign up to my course. Anyone can do it. And we're a bit dubious about that. But the same applies on the personality front as well. Not everybody is psychologically cut out for what investment of any kind, really, but it's property investment in particular, involves. So let's dive into our first kind of type of character, which is Stressful Susan. And as Rob said, this is not based on any one individual. So if your name is Susan, do not get offended. So Stressful Susan, who is this? You see rainbows, Susan sees a storm coming. This person will worry over the smallest of details. They'll work themselves up into a frenzy about it, and then they'll pass those worrying vibes onto everyone they meet. This is the first type of person who shouldn't be investing in property. And yeah, if you're going to get easily stressed out, it might not work because there will always be something that isn't going 100% perfectly, or something which might not go 100% perfectly in the future. And if you're going to be overly worried about that, this might not be the type of investment for you, because even if you are very much kind of hands off in the way that you operate your property business, and we've talked about that a lot and how that is possible, if you're psychologically unable to switch off from it and just kind of let people do their job, let things happen and go with the flow, even if you're not physically doing it yourself in person, you're still going to find that very, very difficult.
You are. Listen to our episode on things go wrong in property. We've covered things do go wrong in property, and they go wrong a lot, but most are just small things that you shouldn't worry about and you should let other people take care of. But some people really take it to heart. Property investment, for most people, is about the long term. If you're a stressful person, then do not even consider flips or HMOs, because you're just going to have a meltdown. But even stressful people really struggle with normal buy-to-let. Listen to that episode. Also listen to the episode where I lost tens of thousands of pounds. I actually sound very jolly in that podcast because I just know it's a journey. You know, things happen. Recently, I've had a tenant leave and it's cost me a few grand because things have gone wrong. But hey, you know what? It's just a small detail on a big journey. I'm not bothered because the overwhelming majority of things I do are positive. Don't get caught down in the small stuff. If you're that person who sees and stresses over the littlest, smallest details, then definitely do not invest in property.
No, and there is an art, and it's a difficult one. I couldn't really put a finger on it, but there's an art to knowing when things are worth not worrying about, when things are worth picking up on and acting on, and when to just let things go. It is difficult, but Stressful Susan definitely errs on the side of getting stressed out about every little detail, regardless of whether it's important in the grand scheme of things or not. And somebody else who's kind of perhaps a close relation, but a little bit more scary to come across is Angry Andrew.
Angry Andrew, yeah, probably Susan's cousin. Andrew is a bit like Susan, except he trades stress for rage. Andrew will kick off on anyone who comes into contact with him at the drop of a hat. He thinks this is the best way to get things done. If people want to get things done, then I'll get angry. He will get people's attention. He will. But those who can avoid him will, and nobody will like him. They might be nice to his face, but they won't like him. Andrew, Rob, not one that you really want to deal with.
No, definitely not. And again, it's a difficult one because, you know, when you're working with lots of different people, you'll need to be the squeaky hinge in order to get things done. If you do need to be forceful, but there's a way of being forceful without being shouty and angry. And again, it's about sort of picking your battles, isn't it? And most of the time you can just be laid back and let things happen. Sometimes you'll need to step in and make sure that you get what you want, but there are ways. And sometimes if you get angry and you get shouty, it'll work for that one time, but no one's going to be very happy about it. And it often means that you're going to mysteriously drop to the bottom of the list for things in future, which just means that kind of you get into this cycle of having to kick off about everything in order to get what you want. And it's not healthy. You don't want to be an Angry Andrew, and you definitely don't want to be doing business with any of them.
Yeah, Andrew, it's just not worth it. Relax, have a cup of tea, chill out. It's not worth it. Right. So that's Andrew and Susan. But there are different types of people as well. Those two, you might have thought, okay, yeah, I've met them. But this person, you could see some merit in their habits and their ways. It's Dithering Derek.
Yeah, now Derek is a nice guy. He means well, and he's doing the right thing because he's educating himself. He's doing his research. He's being diligent. We could call him diligent Derek, but the problem is he can't pull the trigger. He'll attend meetups, events and courses. Maybe he'll spend thousands of pounds on going on various courses, just always looking for that last thing that will help to convince him that he's got what he needs in order to get started. He thinks it's an essential part of the process to just gather all the information there is. And that's laudable up to a point, but Dithering Derek, unfortunately, has been doing this for years, and he's never actually going to get to the point of investing. There's always going to be something more, that extra bit of knowledge or that extra bit of certainty, or he's waiting for exactly the right time. And you know what? It's never going to happen. Now, this is very dangerous for you if you are not one of these characters who we're talking about today. And you're not. You're one of the wonderful people, the majority of wonderful people in property. Because, you're a nice person. You'll come across someone like Derek at a meetup or somewhere else. You'll give them a little bit of your time. But you'll get very, very frustrated quickly if you keep doing that. Because you'll keep helping him out, you'll keep listening to his ideas and kind of almost indulging his property fantasies. But you're going to get frustrated because he's never actually going to do anything. And people in property love to help as a general rule. And we love to help, and it's really nice to see people succeed. But there's nothing more frustrating than giving somebody advice and then them never acting on it at all. So you don't want to be a Dithering Derek because you're just wasting your time. You're just going to be basically having a hobby of researching property but never doing anything, which doesn't get you anywhere. But you also need to have Derek on your radar to make sure that when you are spending time talking to people or helping people, they're actually going to do something with it and not just waste your time.
There's two things we say quite frequently. One, the real learning starts when you invest. That's when the most knowledge will come to you. And second, Rob touched on this, but there's no such thing as a perfect deal. It doesn't exist. You're looking for very good, but perfect. You can always find a reason not to invest in something. Always. Always. There's no perfect investment. It does not exist. So, Derek, if you're listening and you've been looking for that deal, maybe get a new hobby. Maybe, trains, train set, something like that. And that's not a dig. I love trains. But while Derek is a nice guy, someone far more annoying is Terry the Talker. Terry's the opposite of Derek, but produces the same results. Terry will talk to anybody who listens about his grand plans, and may even make a little bit up in his own mind to keep up appearances. Terry will love stealing your time. He will chat and chew your ear off at any type of meetup he goes to. I'm pleased to say I've not met a Terry the Talker at a Property Hub meetup, and that's genuine, I haven't. However, you will meet them eventually, because I've met them at different events and scenarios. Now, once you've identified a Terry the Talker, someone who won't shut up about their grand aspirational plans and has actually done nothing, you want to get away from them pretty quickly, because Terry will use you for his own ego. He will keep you in the space and talk and talk and talk at you until you pass out. He passes out. He will go on and on and on. And he will do as much as Derek, but he'll just be a lot more bravado about it, but will produce the same results.
Yeah, I've got to say, I haven't met a Terry at the Property Hub meetup either. We can only assume it's because our leaders do such a fantastic job of attracting the right kind of people and passing on what it is that these events are all about. But I have met some Terrys at other events. There are plenty of them out there. This isn't just specific to property at all. I'm sure there are Terrys in all walks of life. But yeah, when you do come across one, nothing good will come of it, because it'll either just steal your time, or worst case, it'll make you feel bad because you think that he's got all these really great ambitious plans, and this is a guy who's got everything sorted and you're just more modest, or you're not so sure. But in fact, it's all rubbish. So either way, nothing good will come from that conversation. Back away quickly. Okay, now another character who seems fun at first is Gung-Ho Grace. If you come across a Gung-Ho Grace, you at first will be quite excited because she's so enthusiastic about property and she's so keen to get going, seems really motivated, the absolute opposite of a dithering Derek. But Grace is putting herself in some fairly serious danger. So, for example, you'll come across people like this who've just come into some money. They're completely sold on the idea of property, and it's like this money is burning a hole in their pocket. They're just so enthusiastic about property. They can't wait. They just really want to get going. And that means that the first salesperson to get in their face will have her money spent before you know it, because salespeople of a certain type can see these people coming a mile off, and they're not going to hesitate to sell them the right kind of dream, tell them the right kind of thing, and have that money spent for them. Now, if Grace is lucky and the first person she comes across is, relatively competent or trustworthy, then she might do okay. The best case is that she'll do all right, then she'll get bored when the money has been invested and move on to the next thing. Worst case is if that person didn't have her best interests at heart, she could end up losing some or all of her money very quickly. You've got to feel sorry for people like Grace because she's likely to make some very expensive mistakes. And it's tough, Rob, isn't it? Because you don't want to be a dithering Derek, but you don't want to be a Gung-Ho Grace. It's very easy to be trying not to be one of those people and accidentally turn yourself into the other.
It is, and this is where goals and a plan comes into place. I've met a lot of both of those. I've met a lot of Dereks and I've met a lot of Graces. People that I've been speaking to for years and still haven't done anything. But also the complete opposite. When people come into the RMP office, they won't get sold to. They have to go through a strategy, they have to go through a plan, and all the rest of it. But some people just can't wait because those extra weeks, and it's not even that long, but those extra weeks and those extra steps that are meant to help the investor, they can't do it, and they just go out and literally. Often it's like inheritance or something like that. They are spent up 2 weeks later. It's it's phenomenal how quickly they can get through tons of cash. And before you know it, they've bought overpriced, apartments somewhere, or they've bought off plan where they can't get a mortgage and they've got to put 50% down or something bonkers, or even worse, student pods. They've just bought into whatever's been sold to them. As you said, Rob, you've got to feel sorry for them because they've never had money before and they don't seem to keep it for long either. But there is a character that really sums up the majority of the investors on the podcast. And that's sincere. It really is the vast majority. Certainly the ones we come into contact with through, the companies, through the meetups, through the summits. And we've named this person Remarkable Rob. Now, Remarkable Rob is well balanced. He's strategic. He educates himself. He takes action, but doesn't take silly risks. He's good looking. Okay, no, too much. But
I thought you said you didn't base these on any particular person. I'm definitely recognising myself in this one.
Well, yeah, please forgive us that indulgence. It's just in jest. But this is the majority of us, listener. We're balanced, we're sensible. We're not spending our money in 5 minutes, but we're not taking 5 years. We're progressive. We buy property. We educate ourselves. We just do things the right way. We're not trying to become millionaires in 6 months through property with no money down. But equally, we do expect to become wealthy over the long term if we do things right. It's you take action when it needs to be taken, but you don't stress over the small stuff. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I think this has been well. It's been a fun episode for us. I hope it's been fun for everyone else as well. It's been a chance to vent a little bit, but there's a few serious things going on here. First of all, if you come across these types of people, the quicker you can spot them, the quicker you can save having your time wasted. Second of all, if you do recognize yourself as one of these types of people, which I'm sure you won't, but if you do, then you really should think about whether property investment is right for you. There's no point in doing something that's got the potential to stress you out or make you angry or lose a load of your money or waste a load of your time. If you do think that you're one of these people, then there are plenty of other things you can do with your money instead. But also, we're talking about kind of caricatures here. And in reality, nobody is going to be 100% one of these things. But everyone is going to have traits which are helpful when it comes to investment and traits which are unhelpful. Everyone is going to have an element of, taking risks that are a bit aggressive or being a bit stressed out about things or immediately getting angry or just kind of talking a lot. Everyone's got traits which are not helpful. And I think by looking at the extremes, you can start to recognize some of those traits in yourself. And once you recognize them, you can find a way of compensating for them in some way or just being aware of it. I think when it comes to deals, I can occasionally be a bit of a dithering Derek and I can sort of turn something down because I'm just not 100% sure when in fact it would have been perfectly good. There are other people who are going to have other kind of traits which aren't helpful. So this is a bit of fun and it has been really fun, but I think you can, even if you're not one of these types of person, which I am sure you are not, you'll probably spot something in there which could be a little bit uncomfortable. And that's something that you can work on to be better, because however much of a remarkable Rob you are, nobody's perfect and you can always be better.
Completely agree. Lovely. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Now, resource of the week time is coming, and also a little hint of what we've got coming up over the next few weeks, because we've got some good stuff in the can. However, before we get there, of course, we've got to thank our wonderful reviewer. And this week comes from El Rake, and I know who that is. Hello. She says, this podcast truly provides real-time, understandable, relevant advice for property investors. Just as I was listening to episode 151, When Property Goes Bad, mentioned that one before, I received a phone call from my builder to say he's down tools on my flip due to non-payment of bills by my joint venture partner. Still trying to fix the problem, but the whole situation was made so much more manageable by your encouraging and cheerful discussion. Thanks so much. Well, thank you, El Rake. I appreciate that review. And yes, things do go wrong, but see how El Rake seemed to deal with it fine, hasn't melted down. Seems like a bit like a very familiar, like a remarkable Rob.
Well, how about a remarkable resource of the week as well? Or maybe even a pair of resources. This is something that we were talking about with one of our team the other day. And Rob very sagely said, oh, that should be a resource of the week. And so it is. And those resources are PicMonkey and Canva. Both of those will be linked to in the show notes. This week, those show notes are thepropertyhub.net/writeperson. And they are both image editing tools. So you've probably heard of Photoshop, which is just like the sort of like the real kind of professional photo editing package. But for most people who just need to do the occasional bit of graphics, that's far, far, far more than what you need. The great thing about PicMonkey and about Canva is that they are completely free. They're online, so you don't have to install anything. And they're really easy to use. So if you just need to do something quick, like, for example, you want to put together a flyer for a property that you've got available or something like that, these tools make it extremely easy. Or if you've got photos of a property that you're going to use for marketing, but you just need to adjust them a little bit, you need to crop them or increase the brightness or something like that, dead easy. You don't need to have any kind of learning curve. You don't need to have to pay anything. It's just really, really easy. So those are those kind of tools where, you know, if you're like most people, you don't need to do anything with graphics very often, but it's worth bookmarking because when you do, you'll be very glad that you did.
You certainly will. Right. And you'll be very glad you did come back next week because the next couple of weeks, we're putting together some topics that we know have been high in demand. Not too much detail on it yet, but we will be covering in due course personal finance, commercial lending, and a few other bits and pieces. So make sure you're back next Thursday. And, of course, make sure you're back next Tuesday for Ask Rob and Rob. Yep, twice a week, you lucky souls. Okay, well, that's us for another week. Thank you very much for joining us. A reminder, if you are about today, you're listening to the podcast on the Thursday, we will be at the meetup. We will be going to Leicester, and you'll see Rob there, and King's Cross, you'll see me there. So I look forward to meeting those who attend that meetup. And Rob, I'm sure you're looking forward to getting to Leicester. But until next week, when we'll report back on how it went, have a good one.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.